my bright and shining friends. I was recently asked a very interesting question by one of my subscribers, and the contemplation of that topic has prompted me to make this video, which will probably require a follow-up part 2. There are a couple of issues in this discussion. First, how emotions can affect the brain's perception of reality. And second, with what some might call the power of suggestion in relation to belief or intent, and why this seems to affect some more than others. In this first video, I'll bring up some examples of how conviction can play a role in influencing the thinking and behavior of others. Then in part 2, I'll introduce some rather heartless human experiments that hopefully may reveal some answers. Now, I want to begin here on a rather odd note. I say that because the first thing I want to mention may seem sort of disconnected from the topic, but I want to bring it up, and if you'll just hang in there with me, you'll soon see why. Well, not long after my husband passed away, I began to have an unusual idea crop up for me at that time. I couldn't get rid of the idea that maybe he had actually never been here, that this was all sort of my own dream. And this idea just wouldn't let go of me. And yet, of course, everything around me assured me that he had indeed been here. You know, photos, his clothes in the closet, his home office with everything just as he left it, as if he'd simply walked out the door never to come back. And yet, I remembered all those tasks and legalities that we both had to take care of before he became too weak to sign his name. I remember after he was gone, walking through the house, looking at all the evidence that he had, really existed. The paintings that he'd hung on the wall, carefully measuring and leveling each. His shaving stuff sitting on his side of the bathroom vanity. His shoes lined up in the bottom of the closet. So, if he was real, if he really existed, why does it now feel like it was all a dream? Like somehow all this evidence had just been implanted into my mind after the fact, purposely placed there to make me believe it was real. I just couldn't make sense out of it. Yet, as everything that makes up our lives here on planet Earth, it has all been created through thought. And within that thought is intent, belief, opinion, presumption, trust, among others. I've had so many strange occurrences in my life that I've learned to never discount any possibility, because this world is my brain's representation of what my consciousness is telling it through my beliefs and perceptions. In essence, because my surroundings, the physical world, is built this way, whatever is received and implanted into my brain, true or not true, will show up as my life. So, if a stronger or higher frequency intention, for whatever reason, is directed into my brain, for me to see, for example, then I would probably just believe it as fact. And of course, I'm talking about anyone here, not just me. Do you remember the Next Generation Star Trek episode, Chain of Command, when Captain Picard is captured by the Cardassians and tortured? Well, it was personally one of my least favorite episodes because of what was done to Picard. It was terrible. At one point, Picard's tormentor shows him 4 bright lights and asks him, "How many lights do you see?" Well, naturally, Picard answers truthfully, "There are 4 lights." The Cardassian insists that there are really 5 lights. And of course there aren't. There are 4 lights. The Cardassian uses all sorts of horrible tactics to get Picard to accept that there are really 5 lights, and inflicts him with terrible, intense pain, attempting to force him into agreeing that there are 5 lights. The torture goes on and on. Dehydration, starvation, nakedness, humiliation, forcing his eyes to remain open and pelting him with horrifying images, and more. When Picard is finally completely broken, the Cardassian tells him that, okay, you have a choice: to remain his captive or to be freed to live comfortably on his planet, Cardassia, by admitting that he sees 5 lights. All through this ordeal, Picard never gives in to the Cardassian's torture. Even as he's being saved, he yells out, "There are 4 lights!" However, after he is rescued by the Enterprise crew, he privately admits to counselor Deanna Troi that for a moment he really actually did see 5 lights. Ugh. I'm hoping in my next video to go much deeper into how this happens, how our brain is able, through whatever catalyst brings it about, to basically lie to us. Well, obviously it doesn't always take torture for us to alter our beliefs. I've learned over my lifetime that if you don't question reality, you will never know truth. Unfortunately, historically, there have been numerous tragic examples of this, where people have voluntarily carried out horrific acts of violence against others, simply because someone in authority ordered them to. That authority can even be a news anchor, under the guise of a benevolent guide, giving instructions to humanity to perform an ultimately harmful act upon themselves. Or a military leader giving their men orders to annihilate entire groups of citizens, and they shockingly end up submitting to that authority. We were only following orders. Why are we like this? It's as if we've all been playing some sort of a virtual reality game and have become used to surrendering our own will or common sense to authority. Tragically, we've forgotten that we're wearing a headset, and we've come to believe that this simulated world is real. The facts are that as long as we're on Earth, most of us will never see reality as it truly is. You know, we've all heard the story of the emperor's new clothes, right? This emperor had an absolute obsession with extravagant new clothes and was always hiring weavers and spending huge amounts of money on having luxurious suits made. Well, one day, 2 imposters show up posing as weavers, offering to create the most magnificent suits that the emperor could ever imagine. They played the cloth out in front of him, only of course there really wasn't any cloth. They were just putting him on. These tricksters told the emperor that this cloth was so extraordinary and fine that it would actually appear invisible to anyone who was stupid or inept. Well, the emperor, not wanting to appear stupid, hired them, and they began to set up looms and pretend to begin weaving. Of course, everyone in the emperor's employ could see that the looms were empty. But not wanting to be seen as fools, they also pretended to go along with the weaver's lies, complimenting the beauty of the material and so on. Well, finally, the fake weavers announced that the emperor's suit is finished. And they actually act out dressing him with this elegant new suit. The emperor, not wanting to be seen as unsophisticated, expresses his admiration for these amazing new clothes and sets off to parade through the streets, showing off his new suit. But of course, he's actually completely naked. Well, the entire town is stunned to see this naked man proudly striding up and down the streets. Yet no one dares to say anything until a little boy, seeing the truth, blurts out, "Look, the emperor's not wearing any clothes." Well, the entire town then realizes the truth and repeats the boy's statement. The emperor is naked. However, the emperor's vanity is so strong that he refuses to admit that he's been duped and uncomfortably continues his naked procession. You know, we have to start wondering and asking the big questions. So many of us have just accepted the ridiculous explanations because we didn't want to appear foolish or stupid. For example, why haven't we ever asked why, no matter what politician gets into office, nothing ever changes? Could it be that it's all just a deception? And over all of my life, I've heard the absolute laughable explanations of the UFO/UAP sightings and abductions. Everything from weather balloons and swamp gas. Couldn't they at least come up with a more believable or credible lie? I'm pretty sure that weather balloons don't take you on board and speak to you. And now they're even getting more and more outlandish with their fake disclosure. How ridiculous are we going to get with all of this? So, what if we stop asking outside authorities for answers and begin asking these questions to ourselves? We'd definitely get closer to the truth. I mean, have you ever wondered if everything you've ever believed to be real is only real because you've never questioned it? And what would happen if you did? How do we know if anything is really true? Have you ever considered that those walls of your house are only thought forms that have been created for this particular experience of human life? All those pathways, those thousands of footsteps that we've made from, walking from room to room for 20 years or more. Have you ever thought that these were maybe just ideas placed for you to interact within as sort of an experiment? So what is the truth here? What if I suggest to you again that we, humanity, are all a part of a monumental experiment, a game of consciousness and discovery? Most of us have had plenty signs throughout life that things aren't exactly as we've believed them to be. If the world really was as classical physics has taught us, there could never be things like spontaneous healings or extraterrestrials or children who remember past lives or channeling or objects disappearing and reappearing. or so many other strange happenings. When I was about 16 years old, I became really ill with a high fever, and my legs were affected, and I wasn't able to walk normally for nearly a year. This time for me became a time of deep introspection, and it was during that time that I began having a very disturbing, reoccurring nightmare that really freaked me out every time I had it. It always consisted of a scary bad guy, or a group of scary bad guys, running after me with a syringe that I knew that was filled with something that would kill me. They were after me because of something I had said or done, and they needed to get rid of me. They always chased after me, blocking my way. I was terrified. Usually I was able to escape, sometimes with the help of friendly ETs, and sometimes I would just wake up safe in my bed. The scariest were the times where they caught me and injected me with this poison, and I would become immobilized and laying there dying. And I could feel my awareness slipping away until finally I no longer existed, just blackness. When I woke up from that dream where they injected me, I always felt dizzy and sick for a while afterwards. Okay, so let's get back to the examination I first mentioned. How some things in our lives are illusions and may not really exist, yet are believable enough to convince us that what we're looking at is ultimate truth. There are also those times when what may seem like an illusion can in truth be a warning of some potential danger that may actually save our lives, even in dreams. Most of us believe that our senses and our intelligence are the final illustration of truth. But what if it was exactly the opposite of what we've been taught, and the world is really a dream? Our reality is nearly identical to a dream, in the sense that it is not what it appears to be. Now, that doesn't mean that the physical 3D world is not of value. It is, of course, only it's not the full picture, not the ultimate reality. So, what does that mean? How could this really be? I mean, there is obviously a physical world out there that we see and interact with every day. So am I saying that it doesn't exist? No. The world we see through our senses, the physical world, does indeed exist, yet as an incomplete picture, a consequence of our senses and impressions. Like when we look in the mirror and decide that this is all that we are, yet it's only the most superficial picture of who and what we are. When we look in the mirror, we can't see our soul, our essence, the core of our being. And because what we perceive with our senses is so limited, our vision of the world is only a tiny fraction of what exists. Imagine what there is that we can't see, or even if we ourselves are real. In fact, how do we really know that this world didn't just materialize a couple of hours ago? But we think we've been living a human life for 40 or 50 years. How can we be sure that we're even human? Maybe we once were human and now we're not, but we still believe we are? How can we be sure that at this very moment we might not actually be a living embodied person at all? Instead, maybe just a brain that's been hooked up to some highly advanced computer program that's replicating the brain's, processes and senses, simulating experiences of an outside world. Maybe we've always been only a brain, that brain in the jar scenario, controlled by evil aliens who are manipulating us into believing we are living a real human life, but it's only a computer program. Sort of like the movie The Matrix, where the controllers create an artificial intelligence that simulates life on Earth, which the human believes is real, but with the true purpose of harvesting these poor humans as an energy source. Well, so what the heck do we do with all this information? We can use it to expand everything we've come to know as life. Once we recognize that our reality goes so much deeper than what we've been observing, we can let go of limiting beliefs and gain a sense of detachment, helping us to live each moment sort of like a video game, allowing us to exceed the illusion. In order to do this, we need to question everything that our reality shows us, everything that is taken for granted, and discover truth without the interference of expectation, finally able to accept beauty without judging it for its value. This means finding ways of remaining intrigued by possibility, willing to see further than just what our senses are showing us. It takes opening our hearts and minds to the magic of life. It's all there for the awakening soul. So, since we're really dreaming this life, since it's all an illusion, what are memories? Are they important or real? Or do they simply hold us captive, like an echo, to a life long gone? It's like falling in love. It's there, it's everything. Then it's gone. Almost like it never existed. Only a memory. Is holding on to that memory enough to prove it really existed? How many times have you fallen in love? In how many lifetimes? And does any of it really matter now? This is why this question keeps coming up. Was any of it real? Can I prove any of it really happened? Or was it all just a beautiful dream? Thanks so much for listening. And don't forget to stay tuned for part 2 very soon. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.